Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today is a super exciting day as we get to check out the Bigscreen Beyond 2 VR headset, and this thing is amazing. One app designed to do it all. Hanger Control brings everything together: control bindings, hardware configuration, mod and profile management, application launching, add-ons, config files, and more, all managed from a single application. Mods Hanger goes beyond just mods and add-ons. It manages profiles, config files, text files, backups, snapshots, and helps keep your community folders clean and organized. Application Hanger launches your entire sim stack with a single click. Your Stream Decks are fully controlled through the Hanger Control plugin, while all of your other Stream Deck plugins remain active and available. Built by a simmer for simmers, Hanger Control adds new features and hardware support every week based on community feedback. It's a one-time purchase with lifetime updates, no subscriptions. You can try it for free for 5 days with no restrictions at overkillsimulations.com. Just create an account, head to your account page, download the latest version, and get started. And if you're looking for in-depth Microsoft Flight Simulator aircraft tutorials, check out my Patreon site. Links to Hanger Control and Patreon are down in the description below. Okay, folks, so enjoy the unboxing experience, and we'll talk about everything. The big thing that you're probably going to want to look for is the timestamp for the flight review, where we talk about the experience of both Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 as well as demoing it live in DCS World. So if you're looking for the actual experience of it, that's up later in the timeline. There is a timestamp down below that will send you to it. So first, let's talk about the specs of this thing as you guys enjoy this. It is a 2560 by 2560 resolution per eye, giving you 5120 by 2560 combined. Pixel density is 32 pixels per degree, so PPD. Display size 1-inch micro OLED panels, which I can tell you right now when you put it on feels much wider than that. Now, the micro OLED allows for extremely high pixel density with deep blacks and high contrast. And again, we'll talk about that more during the flight demo, but the coloring was phenomenal. Supports both 75 Hz and 90 Hz refresh rate using a lower render resolution with upscaling is how the 90 Hz works. 75 Hz, you'll get the full native resolution. And at 90 Hertz, the PC render resolution can drop down to 1920 by 1920 before upscaling back up to the panel resolution. As far as field of view, diagonal field of view is up to 116 degrees with the horizontal between 108 and 100, and vertical field of view around 91 to 95. Now, these things are fantastic. The lenses are pancake lenses. The optic improvement with the Bigscreen Beyond 2 is you get the reduced glare. I noticed really none of it, which we'll talk about in the flight. Increased brightness and edge clarity improvements. Again, we'll talk about more about that during the flight. I was really absolutely blown away. IPD range goes from 48 millimeter to 75 millimeters supported with 55 to 70 physical adjustment. Independent per IPD is available. This thing is, again, they thought about it all. All right. Now, the last piece is a few requirements you want to be ready for as we get into the assembly. SteamVR Lighthouse is required. It says it supports 1.0 and 2.0 base stations. I do recommend the 2.0, but they're pretty pricey. Controller compatibility includes the Valve Index and SteamVR Lighthouse. Obviously, ecosystem is required. So now let's get into the cool stuff here. The last piece that I want to talk about is the optional eye tracking. Eye tracking is in beta right now, and it is included with the Beyond 2 variant if you choose. And it does have an integrated microphone, which you guys will hear later on during the flight review, which I was really impressed with. So, getting right into the rest of the video now. As you guys can see, obviously the big thing that everybody knows about, I would hope, is that using an Apple device, an iPhone or an iPad, there is a software they use that scans your face and gives you a one-to-one, extremely accurate comfort fit face mask, which you guys are seeing here as I use. Snaps on with a couple of magnets and it locks right into place. That sucker ain't budging. But as you saw in that white box that we just put away, that is a second kit that you can get that's more for family and friends that doesn't have the conformed nose guard, so it enables, again, family and friends to be able to use it. The head strap, super simple design, yet very sturdy and very functional. Snaps right into place. A good amount of thumb pressure in order to get it back off, so it's not going to pop off by accident. Very nicely done. Very simple. Again, it goes back to that, keep it simple, man. And it's a heck of a lot easier when you're not holding a camera at the same time. But, you know, the struggles of life, right? Let me tell you. Now, as far as adjusting your IPD, it's super easy. That's what the little screwdriver you guys saw me pull in the beginning was for. It's not really a screwdriver, it's a square cut, so please don't lose it. Now, I'm sure you could still find one. You know, there's plenty of them. You can purchase them online, but there is your IPD scale right there. Now, what you want to do is on the sides is there's a little hole that allows you to adjust the IPD of the lens. So what you do is you simply just take that screwdriver, put it into the side of it, feel it gently. It does have a track that sort of slides down, so don't force it. Make sure you're lined up with where you belong, and you will feel it pop into place. And when you turn it, the sliders will move, and you set your IPD going in the scale. Snap your face mask back in. Make sure you have SteamVR installed. Make sure your base stations are set up. If you are just now installing SteamVR, make sure you restart your computer so you don't get the gotcha that I got. Restart your computer. Then plug in your Bigscreen VR, and the utility should download automatically. However, if not, simply go to bigscreenvr.com, my Beyond, and you can download the utility from there. As far as the dongle is what connects the VR headset to the computer. You have two USB 3.0s that plug into the back of the computer and one display port. And then you have the one USB that plugs into the side of the headset. Look at circle to circle. Notice the dots on each cable. That's how you know you are where you belong. So now we'll jump into the actual flight in DCS World, where I'm sure I'll cover most of this again, but in far more detail. I hope you guys enjoy the flight. I certainly did. Check this thing out.
All right, folks, so here we are in the UH1 Huey for DCS World. Now, we're going to do my pros and cons for a first impressions video, and I'm going to give you guys a couple pieces of information that are kind of important to all this. First off, I'm choosing DCS World as my showcase, but I want you to know that I have been in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I've got an hour in both sims. Okay, and so now I decided to pick DCS as my show just because, well, really we're always in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I thought it'd be kind of fun to show something different. But there's another piece to that. The other piece to that is that I find it far more difficult to get good FPS in VR in DCS World than in anything else. Microsoft Flight Simulator, I will say, especially since the release of DLSS 4.5, has been relatively easy to get pretty damn good performance. Second thing, I am not using any kind of tool or editing or anything like that to optimize my VR experience. So like the SteamVR optimizer, fantastic application, by the way, that can be found both in my Discord and in the link down the description below from the wonderful developers, VR Flight Sim Guy, Shark, and a few others who are involved. I am not using that in this particular scenario because I wanted it to be raw and basically uncut, if you will, raw and uncut. Finally, this is a first impressions, right? We've got an hour into this thing. I'm going to be going through first my cons to the headset, and then we will talk about my pros. But it's, again, very important that you understand this is a first impressions and that all these can change. Though I will at occasion reference other headsets, this is not meant to be a comparison. There are just certain points that we're going to hit that sort of, it's kind of hard not to set a comparison based on what we're discussing. So let's get straight into it with that in mind. First off, we're going to talk about the microphone. We are using the microphone that is built into the Beyond VR, right? Okay. I wanted to make sure that we were still recording. That was sort of a critical piece. Yeah, that's us. Okay. Anyway, I had changed it earlier. I want to make sure I remember to change it back. So we are using the microphone that is on the Beyond VR, and I got the Bigscreen Beyond, and I have to be honest, this is the best sounding microphone I have ever heard in a VR headset. It is extremely good, and I was not expecting this kind of quality. Obviously, I did a sound check first, so had to test it. And yet the guys have to forgive me. Believe it or not, it's going to sound really, oh my gosh, but I put moisturizer on my skin earlier, and that is what is irritating my face, not the mask. Anyway, so let's get right into it. I had to. My skin was all flaky. Anyway, digress. So here's the deal. Let's get right into the pros and cons. First con, and again, these are all subjective, right? These are my opinions, what I feel. So first con is going to be the use of SteamVR. Actually, let's back that up and we'll segue into that. First one is going to be the use of base stations. You have, after tax, shipping, everything else, what equates to basically an $1,100 VR headset. That requires SteamVR base stations. Those SteamVR base stations, at least 2.0, which I would not ever recommend buying 1.0, and I don't even know if these are compatible with 1.0, I doubt it, are $200 a piece right now. At least if I were to go to Amazon right now, they run at $199, so $200 a piece. Even though you can get by in most seated situations like this, which is what this VR headset is definitely designed around, you can get by with one, but I would absolutely recommend two. Because if you ever do things like this, or really drastic things, you'll either crash into the ground, or your headset will lose tracking. So it can cause an unpleasant experience, at least even temporarily. But there's also a pro that can be considered for base stations, and that is infrared tracking does not have some of the same limitations that inside-out tracking does, such as brightly lit rooms. With inside-out tracking, you have to have a balance between light and dark. And for those who don't know what I'm referring to with inside-out tracking, the Quest 2, the Quest 3, the Pimax Crystal, Crystal Light, and now the Crystal Super, just to name a few, use inside-out tracking, meaning that it has cameras on the outside of it that determine its position. It has no requirement to use a base station. So in a dark room with a base station, you won't have any problems. If anything, you'll probably get even better tracking because it uses infrared. But in a very light lit room, hang on, I got the keyboard sitting right here and it keeps hitting my, oh, hello, keeps hitting my stick. So in a lightly or very light lit room, same thing can happen with inside out tracking. You can lose tracking or start having an issue. If it's too dark, you can lose tracking and start having an issue. With infrared tracking, using the base stations, you usually have two things that can be a problem. One, very bright rooms. For example, to the right of me, there is a window that I have that is a very large window that is pointed at a sensor that is right over there. That sensor was getting hit by the sunlight earlier, and it was causing a problem. It was making it think it was receiving tracking that it was not. So there's a downside to a base station too. Usually it has to do with too brightly lit rooms. The other thing is reflective sources. If you have anything else that is causing reflection, a mirror behind you, a TV, anything that can have a lot of reflection, they can cause a problem with base stations. So there's pros and cons to both, right? Next, that's why we backed up, as you guys heard, the segue into SteamVR. SteamVR is fine and all, and I know it's gotten a lot better than what it used to be, but I still do not feel that it is particularly well optimized. It still has some issues. I don't like relying on Steam. Ow, I have an itch. Oh, okay. I don't like relying on Steam for my VR experience, even though it does support OpenXR. I do still feel that there is a slight edge, and I do say slight, I'm being fair here, a slight edge to services like Pimax Play, or probably even Oculus, although I don't use my Oculus Quest for PCVR unless I'm testing like mixed reality. That's a whole different ballgame to talk about. For same kind of principle, I do not feel the Quest 3 is optimized for PCVR, and it wasn't designed around that. Anyway, digress. So SteamVR is not my favorite. And you guys will hear more about that as we talk about the experience of setting this up. which I guess we can get right into it. So I don't like the use of base stations personally. I prefer inside-out tracking 100 times over base stations, but I want to add one more piece to that, and that is, if this had inside-out tracking, it would require cameras. If it required cameras, it would require more hardware. In order to also have more hardware, you'd have to a larger space, so it would lose a lot of the benefit of what makes it so amazing, and that is the fact that it is so small and so light, which we'll talk about here in a minute, that it really changes the game. Okay? So, coming back out, so we've got SteamVR base stations, the use of SteamVR, now the setup process. The setup process for Bigscreen itself was perfectly fine, smooth as hell, once I figured out the SteamVR issue. I had not had SteamVR installed for a very, very long time. I've been using, obviously, focusing on the Pimax. I've been using the Pimax Crystal and the Supers and this, et cetera, et cetera. So I haven't had a need for SteamVR. So when I reinstalled SteamVR to obviously set up the big screen, SteamVR did not tell me, at least, and if it did, I missed it, that it said that I needed to restart my computer. And that led into a second segue. So I could not get things to connect the way I wanted them to. Especially specifically the base stations would not connect to SteamVR. I could not understand what the hell was happening. So I finally said enough is enough, and I restarted. By the way, SteamVR detected the big screen, but it wasn't working. So I restarted my PC. SteamVR obviously did its registry updates. After I restarted, everything fired right up. There was no problem whatsoever. Now, the one caveat to that is before I restarted, there is a big screen utility, which is fantastic. By the way, you can adjust your brightness level. You can set the IPD, interpupillary distance, the distance between your eyes. By the way, that's very important for virtual reality, as we talked about earlier. It sets the IPD in SteamVR. That way, Steam sends the image at that IPD. So great tool, great utility. What was supposed to happen, and I imagine, again, this was my fault, was that you're supposed to install SteamVR. The idea was, I'm assuming, that I should have restarted my computer at that point, then plugged in the Bigscreen VR. Then when the Bigscreen VR was detected, it would automatically download the Bigscreen utility. Well, for me, it never downloaded the utility because it didn't properly detect the SteamVR. Hang on one second. I can hear my phone going off, and I don't know who it is. Nobody important. All right, let's keep flying. Anyway, I apologize, guys. I'm on call at work, so I have to be making sure that I'm hearing the right things. Anyway, so with that being said, I had to go and manually download the utility, which I could not search. At least I couldn't find it by simply searching on Steam for the big screen utility. So I had to use the link that was in the QR code. And because it was a QR code, obviously I had to find the link, grab it from my phone, then I emailed the link, and then I'm pretty sure I saw it yesterday, there was actually a link on the cardboard box for it, or the cardboard instructional. But from there on, it was smooth. So 100% I am fully confident it was my fault. I'm fully confident that if I had done SteamVR, that if I had done the restart after installing SteamVR, then plugged in the big screen, everything would have ran fine. I'm sure it would have picked up then the utility, and we would have not had any of that frustration. So my frustration in that particular part is strictly with SteamVR, but again, that's a reason of why I call that a con. I know I went on sort of a SteamVR tangent, so let's move on. When it comes to cons, that's all I got for you. So I want to get into the one big thing right now that is coming. It's in beta. I have not tested it personally yet, but that is eye tracking. Eye tracking for Bigscreen VR is in beta as we speak. There is a beta thing that I can download. I will be able to test it, but I have not done so I'm not speaking on it. But I know that is a big contender to other VR headsets, is the use of eye tracking. Now, do I think that we're ever going to get an automatic IPD adjustment? I don't know, right? That is required. That is one of the bonuses to, for example, the Pimax, is that if you have the Crystal or the Crystal Super, it can do automatic IPD setting. It uses the eye tracking, determines where the center of your eyes are, and then it adjusts the lenses automatically. It's an option. I don't think that that would probably come to the big screen VR, but this is pure speculation. I have no basis to state this, and if I'm wrong, I will be very happy and surprised. I don't think that particular piece will come here, at least not without increasing the size of the headset. Again, that's going to require motors. That's going to require, that was my fault. I stuck my hand in front of the sensor like a dumbass. That'll require, you know, more hardware, make it larger. So I do want to toss that one out right now. I don't know where that's going to go as far as automatic IPD, but eye tracking itself is on its way. It's in beta. So fantastic news there, because eye tracking is also a real big thing for the dynamic foveated rendering. Basically what that means, for those who don't know, is that the high resolution portion of the lens will only be where your eyes are looking, and that will save a lot of overhead and performance overall for your PC, therefore giving you a better VR experience. Okay, so there's that. So fantastic news on that. Now, getting into what you probably all have been waiting for me to shut the hell up about everything else for and talk about, is the overall experience now after, probably 2.5 hours now in the big screen VR. From the moment I put it on, to the comfort of the face mask that they use the Apple application to scan your face, and then they custom fit it based on that scan, to just the overall wearing it for that extended period of time, has been phenomenal. Phenomenal. Anyone else who's developing VR should be very scared of this thing. Flat and simple. It is phenomenal. It is extremely lightweight. I would compare the weight to a slightly heavier set of swim goggles. I mean, that's it. The only place you feel the weight is slightly against the rim of your eyes, and that's because you've got the tension band pulling it against your face. So that's why I'm comparing it to swim goggles, right? The swim goggles would be the same thing. The only thing you really feel with swim goggles is it pushing against your face because of the strap. That's what it's supposed to do. Something's got to hold it there. Notice I did not use the top strap, as we discussed earlier on in the video, and I tried it for a minute and I didn't like it. But I actually felt that the top strap sort of did this too much right here. And pros and cons, again, completely subjective. Completely subjective. That's a me thing. That has nothing to do with what you may feel. I like that it ships with one, but I felt this was perfectly comfortable for me. I really like this just the way it is. If it ever starts to get too loose, I just come back here, pull those up. That's it. No different than adjusting your glasses, you know. And I adjust my glasses 100 times a day, so that works out. So comfort is 5 stars out of 3 across the board. The comfort is phenomenal. There's no neck fatigue back here, you know, that you get with some of the heavier headsets. Even when you make sure that you put that back strap underneath the base of your skull there, you know, you're still going to get that fatigue. You know, those headsets are so heavy. And this one, non-existent. I personally never got to try the first version of the big screen VR. But I know that one of the big complaints was that you get some, what is it called, chromatic aberration, where you get the sort of colors bleeding in, causing almost a light reflection kind of thing at the bottom of the lenses. None of that. None of that. Absolutely none. There's none. There's no reflection. I'm sitting here rotating my eyes like you guys can see. Nothing. It's gorgeous across the board. It doesn't seem to matter. Colors don't change. Like I know you guys can see I'm looking straight, but I'm turning my head down, looking through the top of the lens, the bottom of the lens, and the color palette seems to be the same all the way through. I mean, of course, you're going to get a little bit down here when I'm doing this. Like I'm looking at the tops of the trees from the very bottom of the lens right here. So I mean, that's just dumb, right? Who's going to do that? And that's where I could see like a little distortion, but duh. Right, that's kind of a no-brainer to me. Ouch! Oh, is that what's hurting? Something was pinching me. Anyway, so these micro OLED lenses are phenomenal. The color scheme is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Now the brightness on it, you adjust that through the utility, and it's got I didn't push it any higher than its default. Like I said, I'm really enjoying the color just as it is straight out of the box. And I think that leads to another piece. If you want something that's just plug and play, let's say, especially if you already have base stations, all right? If you already have the base stations, all right, especially, you're going to plug this thing in, you're going to load it, you're going to set your runtime, whether it be the OpenXR or SteamVR, whichever you choose. I did set OpenXR as my SteamVR runtime, and then you're going to launch your sim and you're going to fly, or you're going to drive, or whatever it's going to be. That's it. Your setup time will be 10 minutes. 10 minutes. The magnetic connectors that hold your face mask on, that's such a slick idea. Such a slick idea. I mean, it just worked. Again, going back to the comfort of the face scan, it's totally cool, but yet it's very nice that they offer a third party, or not third party, what's what I'm looking for? A non-conforming face mask, I guess, for like if you want your buddies or your friends, your family to try the headset out, they can use that one that's more general, and it has the, you know, the rubber flaps that go over your bridge. You know, there's so many things. The resolution is gorgeous. I can read absolutely everything. There is nothing that I can't read. I can read the circuit breakers. I'm pointing to them like you guys can see it. I can read the circuit breakers just fine. I can read all the switches. There isn't anything down here I can't read. So the white frequency chart, I'm having a little trouble reading. But if I stare at it long enough, I can make out the numbers. But, I mean, I don't use that. Do you? Certainly everything on the gauges and the radios and the switches up on the control panel, I can read all that just fine. I can identify objects on the ground perfectly fine. I have not tried this in air-to-air, but I feel like that's an unfair comparison anyway. I've done the Crystal Super in air-to-air and DCS, and air-to-air targets are just flat-out hard to see in VR. I think that's just the nature of the beast when it comes to DCS World. In Microsoft Flight Simulator, just a quick touch on it, I had a flawless experience. Completely flawless. Absolutely 100% flawless. There was no issues whatsoever. Everything was clean, clear, and crystal. I will say I had a better experience in Microsoft Flight Simulator than I did in DCS, and that is why I chose DCS, is because DCS requires a bit more. It just does. It always has. To make VR work really nicely, you got to be willing to tweak. You got to be willing to go through the settings. You got to be willing to adjust your render scale and all that jazz. Like DCS, that's just DCS, and it always has been for a long time in VR. You know, it's just always been the nature of it. But once you get it, it's gorgeous. I will say, even with DCS though, I actually bumped up the settings, just for the record. Again, to be clear, we're using DLSS. Be foolish not to. I did test with the SimVR optimizer tool running, and the experience was 100% perfect. I mean, just perfect. So I do want to stress that that is a very powerful tool. And then finally, the last thing I want to talk about is hardware. We're running an RTX 4080, the 7900 X3D, 64 gigs of RAM on an NVMe M.2 hard drive, right? So those are really the important pieces to know as far as performance. Nothing's overclocked, by the way. I don't do overclocking. I don't feel much of a need for overclock anymore. I feel like we've sort of passed that era. I know a lot of people are like, push it, push it, push it, but nah, I'd rather increase the lifespan of the hardware and tune my settings down just a hair. But DCS I didn't. In DCS I actually turned them up. So, and with DLSS 4.5, it really increases the reach of virtual reality to many, many other users. I guarantee on a 5070 Ti I could get very similar, if not the same performance. 4070, my expectation would be close to. You'd probably have to tune a few things down. The 4080 certainly outpowers the 4070. The 5070 Ti, for those who are reference, you know, not counting multi-frame generation because it doesn't do squat in VR anyway. You would probably get slightly less performance than I'm getting on my 4080. I believe the 4080 is about 10% faster. So these are all critical things I want you to be aware of as you're looking into VR. So now I'm going to go into final thoughts. Final thoughts for a first impressions video. I want to be very clear about that. For after 2.5 hours, call it 3 hours of flight in 2 different simulators with it, here are my final thoughts. My final final thoughts are, if you are okay with base stations, if you are okay with SteamVR requirement, if you are okay with no mixed reality or plans there too, right now there's only one headset that I'm aware of that does mixed reality, but there's another one that I know it's being planned for, and quote-unquote face masks being developed that will support it. So keeping that in mind, if you don't know what mixed reality is, look it up. It's a big deal, especially for flight simulation or racing simulation. So if you're okay with if you're okay leaving all the bells and whistles behind, all right, the automatic IPD, I'm gonna keep eye tracking in it because they're developing. It's in beta. So leaving everything else behind. If you're okay, really what it comes down to is the base stations and having a cord. That's a requirement. This is definitely a winner. And if you're okay with the narrower field of view, it is very nice. It has got a good field of view. But the other headsets, I have no choice but to call people out here on this one. Pimax, the Crystal, the Light, and the Super, you're going to get a much wider field of view. No ands if or buts. The Super and the Crystal, you're going to get that automatic IPD adjustment. The inside-out track and the no need for the base stations, which means less hassling. You don't have to worry about mounting them, making sure there's no reflective surfaces. Okay, pros and cons, right? I'm trying to be completely fair. And by the way, just for anyone to understand, I'm a Pimax fanboy. I have purchased and owned every release that Pimax has ever put out up to the 8KX. The Crystal was the first one they ever provided to me. And I still am a diehard. I absolutely love Pimax headsets. With that being said, this thing is phenomenal. So if you can leave all the bells and whistles behind, if you don't mind the narrower field of view, a smaller resolution, absolutely has a smaller resolution, but a very good resolution. Remember what I said, I can read everything perfectly fine. You know, I think we almost hyper focus on resolution a little too much these days. It's gotten high enough where even on the lower end resolutions, you're still getting pretty damn high resolution. So with all that being said, this is definitely the way to go. If you're okay with all those things, leaving those behind, this is the way to go. It is super light. It is incredibly comfortable. There's no fatigue whatsoever. The microphone, like I said, I'm blown away by the microphone. Absolutely blown away by it. The performance is fantastic. The ease of setup when you're not an idiot like me and actually, you know, pay attention to the process of installing SteamVR. Although still, I really do hope that they develop their own utility that can run by itself. But if you don't mind those few hiccups, it is an amazing VR headset. And if you are interested in purchasing it or taking a look in it after this, be sure to use the link down in the description below. The link down in the description below kicks me a little bit back. Not gonna lie to you, kicks me a little bit back, and definitely helps you guys out a bit picking up this headset. It's great. You guys, it's great. Oh, the last down piece. The last down piece. You do have to have, that I'm aware of, I did not see any option for an Android. To get the face mask scan, you have to have an Apple device, either an iPad or an iPhone. But, I mean, even if you don't own one, go to Walmart. I'm sure you'll find 218 people who do. You know, I do. I actually have one of each, but it's worth it. It's worth the hassle even to do that. It really is. The comfort is amazing. I had the hiccups and it's driving me nuts. So anyways, guys, that's really all I've got for you for today's first impressions review. Absolutely stellar experience. I'm loving the hell out of this thing. I really am. It's so comfortable. It's so much lighter. It's so much cooler. That's the biggest thing for me, is the heat. You know, I'm really pleased at how much cooler this headset keeps you. You know, it's so much nicer. You know, normally by now I'd be drenched. There'd be 2 5-gallon buckets down the floor getting the sweat off me. And this thing is just fantastic for that. So you guys know the drill. As always, stay safe and healthy. I hope you guys learned something. I hope it gave you something to think about. And I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys.